sermons to preach on. I've done this sermon several times. But I don't know why this time, as I was looking at it, it was like, I was having such a hard time getting excited, which was ridiculous because it's actually supposed to be the most exciting time in the Bible. Not just we focus everything on the resurrection, that was Jesus coming back to life, but the ascension actually trumps that because that is the bookend to Jesus coming to earth, and now he has ascended to heaven to his Father to finally sit at the right hand of him in glory. Without him ascending to heaven, he would have just been another man who arose, right? But he wasn't. He was the Son of God. And so there needed to be that fulfillment of all the scriptures of him coming to earth, doing everything he did. He died, he arose, and then, after coming back, he ascended. And in a spectacular way. See, and I think that's hard for us to grasp. We can't even imagine, even with all of our wonderful movies and everything out that we have. I can't even begin to imagine what that looked like that day. Have you ever thought about it? Have you ever tried to envision Jesus standing there, first of all, and he's still speaking, and he's still preaching, and all of a sudden, he's just caught up in these clouds, and he's taken up right before them into heaven. How many here have ever gone to the Passion Play? South Dakota or Missouri? South Dakota. Yeah. I haven't seen the one in South Dakota, but I've gone to the one in Branson, or Eureka Springs several times. And I can't get through that inn without having so many goosebumps as Jesus is being ziplined backwards up into the trees. And as much as that is so cool, it was like nothing compared to what it really was. There's a pale comparison. So why do we have a hard time not getting excited to the point of just talking about that all the time? Well, as I chewed on this for quite a while, it was when I looked at the first part of Acts here. It says, he was talking to them again, and then it says he was lifted up into the air, and the disciples were left standing there with their jaws dropped to the ground. I'm paraphrasing here. And all of a sudden, two men, angels, right? Okay, so that wasn't enough that they saw Jesus taken up in a cloud of glory. Now we have two angels that have just appeared in his place, standing beside them as they're standing there looking upward. And the angels go, why are you looking upwards? He's not here anymore. I don't know about you, but I'd still be looking upwards. Right? They didn't get it. They didn't get it at all. But they said, this Jesus, who was just taken up from you into heaven, will come in the same manner that you saw him go up. I think it was so much for their little itty-bitty bodies and brains to take in. I mean, when he resurrected, right, they put him in the tomb, and then they go back and he's gone. They didn't actually see him rise from the dead, did they? No. They just knew they had seen him bring other people back to life. So in their mind, they're trying to figure out kind of what that was like, but they still couldn't even understand that because Jesus actually went to hell and took the keys from the devil before he came back and arose. Now, this time, he's right in front of them when he does it. It was too much for their little minds to even attempt to grasp. Why do I say this? I'm going to back up just a little bit. It said that Jesus was speaking to them, and he was teaching them for 40 days. You know, he had kind of come and gone and come and gone, and then after about that 2-week time, he had stayed with them, and he was preparing them. He was equipping them. Before that, he was pouring out all of his information before he was crucified, but they weren't getting it. You know, it wasn't until right before he was arrested that they go, oh, finally, you're speaking in clear words that we can understand. Now you're not speaking figuratively, but it was like right before he was crucified that things were open to them. That's not very much time, is it? So Jesus comes back, And he spends this time opening with our minds open to what it is he's trying to tell them, what it is he's trying to equip them with, because they're going to go out and they're going to preach the gospel around the whole world, right? But I love what they say to him. They say, I'm going to find my spot right here. They ask him, after he tells them that I will baptize you with the Holy Spirit, not with water from John. But this is what you're going to do. And they're still thinking on earthly terms, right? They're still thinking, what was it that they wanted Jesus to do while he was on earth? He was supposed to save Israel, right? And they still had it in their mind that he was going to save Israel from the Romans and take it back for God, right? In fact, we talked about that quite a bit in depth before Easter and around Easter, and why he had some of the disciples he had, the two zealots that were with him. That was their whole intent. It was a political thing, what started out. They wanted to see Israel restored, just like the Maccabees had done 300 years before Jesus came. They wanted to see Rome overthrown and Jesus on that throne as the knight in shining armor. So when he's talking to them about baptizing with the Holy Spirit, what do they say? They say, oh Lord, will you at this time now restore the kingdom of heaven? He's talking about heavenly things, right? I don't know, maybe this just really hit me more than it's hit you, but I thought this was really funny because he's on this whole train of thought, and all of a sudden they go, oh, now he's going to do it. Now he's going to come in on the white horse and he's going to overthrow Rome. Can you just imagine what Jesus was thinking? Ay. When are you going to get it? He doesn't say that though. He says, it's not for you to know the times or the season which the Father has put in his own authority. But you shall receive power when the Holy Spirit comes upon you, and you shall be a witness to me, get this, in Jerusalem, and in all of Judea, and in Samaria, and to the ends of the earth. Wow, does that sound like that's going to happen in the next day? So I really don't think they were grasping all this. You know, they're getting all excited. He's going, yeah, I've prepared a place for you, and I will be coming back for you, and all this stuff. And they're thinking, okay, now it's going to happen, now it's going to happen, now it's going to happen. And Jesus says, you're going to be preaching the gospel throughout the ends of the earth. Well, that's probably not going to happen in a week. It's been, what, over 2,000 years? And we're getting very, very, very close, but there are still tiny pockets of the world that have not heard about Christ. So as I was thinking about this sermon today, I was like, okay, God, besides the awesomeness and the wonder of the Ascension, what does that mean to us? What could we pull out of this? And all I could think about was patience and waiting. Have you ever been told something was going to happen, and you thought it was going to be right away, and then you had to wait for it? And you had to wait for it. Think about King David. He was anointed as king over Israel. Do you know how many years he had to wait before he actually was crowned king? Some said it was upwards of 20 years. 20 years. How would you like to know that you were just anointed the most powerful person in all of Israel, but not yet? Not yet. And you weren't given a timeline or a deadline. Wait for it. You know, that's kind of the catchphrase that God is always saying to me with everything. Wait for it. Wait for it. Wait for it. Patience is so hard. Now, we talked about the spiritual clothes last week, and we talked about the gifts of the Spirit, and one of those spiritual clothing is what? Patience. Without that patience, we would be minus that article of clothing. Talked about that too. Which means we would be spiritually naked in that spot. Now wrap your minds around this. If you are spiritually naked at that spot because you cannot be patient, where is your weak, vulnerable, exposed spot for the devil to attack? Right there. If you are impatient, if you cannot wait for something to happen, what do you think he's going to keep pestering you with? If you're saying, Lord, I need patience, but you're not patient, he's going to throw everything in your life to try to make you run ahead and make things happen on your own, right? That's why I've always said, a lot of us say that, I wish I could just see the future. I wish I could just see what was coming up next. I am so glad we can't. Because if I could see what was coming up next, I would spend my entire life and all my energy, all my time, trying to make that happen in my own time and in my own way and how I thought it should go, right? Instead of letting God unfold it all out in His time and in His ways. See, the disciples had it their way. They would have had Jesus already sitting on the throne. Did Jesus ever sit on the throne? On the earthly throne? No. That wasn't God's way. And it never was. Jesus will in His timing, and that's when He comes again, when He reigns for 1,000 years. That's when He's actually going to sit on the throne. But that's a long, long, long time away. Not in the disciples' timing. Probably won't even be in our time. Even when He comes back, we probably won't see Him sit on the throne yet. But we like to get impatient, don't we? Especially when there's things that we don't understand. We get caught up in the awe of the moment. I can only imagine what that ascension was like. The endorphins, the rush, the excitement. Oh my gosh, what do I do with this? You want to do something, you want to do something. And then Jesus, what does He tell them? What's the one command? Go back to Jerusalem and wait. I don't know about you, but I'd be sitting there in Jerusalem going, so wait, He said it's going to happen. He said it's going to happen. He's bringing the Holy Spirit. I don't know what that looks like. What's it going to look like? How do you think we'll know when we get it? Do you think we'll miss it? Have we got it already? I don't know. What do you think? We'd be able to just sit there and wait, and wait, and wait. What if God told you that He was going to give you a gift right now? Shortly. It was ambiguous to the gift you were getting. And you didn't really know when. Would you find yourself wondering, how will I know when I get it? Did I miss it? Or maybe you think you got something and you went, well, was that it? Was that not it? See, that's where Jesus took that time. The patience was part of the gift in waiting for the Holy Spirit. Because He knew the ministry that He had set up for. It was not going to be an easy one. They were going to be going out in places that were going to be scary, that was going to be difficult, that was going to be hard. They were going to be proclaiming a gospel that they had witnessed. Others kind of had there, but if they're going to the outreaches and to the ends of the earth didn't even know who Jesus was. I think of Max, our young man from Pakistan. And he's going to the Hindus, and he's going to the Muslims, and he's preaching the gospel of Jesus. And they're trying to grasp, why should I believe in this guy? We've had our religion for 6,000 years. What makes yours better? See, mind-wise, we can't convince people. It's only through the heart, right? It's God who, when the gospel is preached, He starts working on the hearts that are touched and told about His Son. Well, part of my biggest shortcoming is always feeling responsible for the outcome. Anybody else deal with that? If God gives me a job to do, instead of focusing on how to do the job, I spend all my time focusing on what the end result's going to be. And did I do it right? Almost like I'm the one responsible principle. Like, so if he brings somebody to me and he says, I want you to tell them about Jesus. Instead of just focusing on how I'm going to tell them about Jesus, I'm more worried about, are they going to accept Jesus? See, that's not my job. I can't make people accept Jesus. I can't even make people get excited about Jesus. But that's not what God asked me to do. He just asked me to tell them about Jesus. We have to keep the focus on what God is asking and not on what we think should be going on. So when Jesus tells them to go back to Jerusalem and wait, he wasn't looking for any outcome. He was just looking for obedience in the action of waiting. Who would think of waiting as being an action? A lot of us think waiting isn't an action, but it is, right? You are physically and mentally doing something by not doing anything. It's kind of hard to wrap our minds around that, isn't it? Yeah. Why he wanted them to wait, again, like I said, was to prepare their minds. He wanted to kind of strip them. This was probably one of the hardest things they had to do, because before they had been going, doing. Everything was just fast, right up to when Jesus was crucified, and he arose, and he came back, and it was just like one thing after another, and they were so excited, and now this is that time to just decompress, to get centered, and to see what God has waiting next. Next week, we're going to be looking at two men who had been with the disciples all that time. As we said, there were many disciples. Everyone thinks it was just the 12. They were the 12 chosen, close ones. But Jesus had hundreds of disciples that had been with him from the very beginning. And so since they're down one disciple now, because Judas has killed himself, through this time of waiting, they've had a time to quiet their mind and realize that God is calling them to fill that empty spot. Somebody is going to be chosen. Next week, we're going to find out who that somebody is. This week, what I want you to take away from the awe and the glory of Christ's finality, this was the finish of his ministry on earth, that he is now arisen, he is now in heaven with God, sitting at the right hand of his Father, overseeing everything. I want you to take this time, this week, and just be patient. I want you to go home, and I want you to try to clear your mind, quiet yourself down, and say, God, I know you have a gift for me. And he does. He has one for every one of us, if we've asked for it. I know you have a gift for me. And you promised, he has, throughout all the scriptures, if we ask, you will receive. Sometimes we don't take the time to stop long enough to see what the gift is, or to even unwrap it. Think about it. If we are so busy with our life, if God gave you that gift, would you recognize it? And if you did, would you take the time to unwrap it and see what he has waiting inside? Because as the disciples find out, it is going to be completely life-changing. You might be going, I see some uneasiness right now. You're going, I don't know if I'm ready for that. I don't know if I really want that or not. The unknown's kind of scary. That's why I want you to spend a week in patience, in quietness, and prayer. Because God can work on our hearts, and he can work on our minds to prepare us for that which he's about ready to give us.